fish. Silver-crowned mountain. There's a date here. Something's off.
We gotta get back.
Well, I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that up, but welcome back to another episode of Photo Mode. Today we are in the world of Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider to be specific. And this was a little challenging for me because it's more of a linear game. I guess there's elements that are open world, but for the most part it's more linear, at least the early stages of what I was playing and taking photos in. But let's jump in and have a look at a little bit of a tutorial of the photo mode. So this game's a little different. You actually have to open your menu and then go into the photo mode. And we've got a bunch of options here. So firstly, the camera type. This is just the free camera type, which is lets us move in a pretty close proximity of Lara. That you can't move too far, as you can see. We can move up and down, and we'll just have a look at some of the other things. So the field of view here, so whether we want a real close-up image or whether we want to shoot really wide, we've got quite a bit of range there, which is nice. And throughout these photos, I did take a few different images. Now we get to be sick because we go crazy on the roll. So if you want to try some of those Dutch angles, then go for it. I generally don't, but we do have one vertical shot in there for something different. We've got all of the grids that you can bring up if you like, and you can hide the UI completely, which is how I take my screenshots. And moving on to the depth of field here, we always want to override, of course. We want more control. We want to do what we want with the image. So changing the distance, whether it's a very shallow depth of field or not. And so here I normally pump the intensity up so it's really easy to see where the distance is at. And let's just try and focus on this lady here, and then we can bring back that intensity to where we want it to be. So still blurring out the background and the lights there. And then with this next screen, the picture, as I say in all of my videos, I leave this part of the editing for when I take the image into Lightroom. So we'll try and leave all of the exposure and saturation and brightness, leave it where it defaults to, because that should be fine. And then hide on-screen effects. That's going to be more for like fires and things, well, I imagine. I don't know if there was anything that I turned that off for. We've got color filters here. You can change the intensity of them, which is cool, but once again, this is something that I would do in Lightroom. But if you don't have access to Lightroom, it's a good option. There's a bunch of borders in here. I ignored that completely. And of course, I'm not going to turn the logo on, but there's a bunch of different logos. I imagine a lot of these titles are DLC things. And then you can change the position of it as well. So more options once again. And we can shoot Lara if we want. You can actually choose to get rid of Lara completely. So that show Lara option at the top, she just disappears. So if she's in the way, turn her off. At this stage of the game, you can't show the weapons or turn it off because we've just started the game. We shouldn't have any weapons. And then you can change her face type, which doesn't do a whole lot well, I mean, it does something if you're taking photos of it, but this next body feature, it's more important than you might think, and right at the end I've got a bonus image and I'll show you what you can do with that. So not just useful for taking photos of Lara, and there's that contest screen as well, so they obviously do photo contests, but we're not going to worry about that. So I think that's where we'll leave it. Yeah, we'll leave it there for now, and let's get into some actual photos. Okay, so here's our first image. We're not very far into the game at all. We find this temple that's in a tomb. Now, the interesting thing I found out about this was that it's actually basically this photo that I've taken is one of the photos or artwork for the achievement art. One of the achievements I got, I realized was the same photos, but oh well, I've already done it. So pretty basic photo really, just trying to frame the temple in the background there with a lot of this cutout of the cave. So I'm really just getting the depth of field correct. So I want basically the temple to be in focus and everything else sort of blurred around that's close, and then just making sure my composition's right here. But then we should be able to go over to the actual image that I have taken. Looks pretty much the same, so we can see a lot of the foreground elements are pretty blurred out, and then we've got most of the focus on the temple. And then what I've done for the edit here is I've basically taken out a lot of those bluey green colors. For my personal preference, I thought they were a little overpowering, and I mean maybe they're realistic, but it felt like it was a bit overdone for me. So I've taken a lot of the color out of this, and the only part that actually has much color in this image is right at the top of the temple, the stairs, and there's something golden up there. That is like the only part of color in this image. So I like how this one turned out. You may prefer how the game sees this image a bit better, but it's just about personal preference when you're doing the edit. So we can move on from that one, and we're into some wildlife photography. Now this one's interesting for a few reasons. So we're doing more of a close-up thing, so our field of view is a lot smaller, I guess. And also animals, I guess nature, it's a bit like real life. You can't really predict what they're going to do, and this was sort of my first run through. So here I'm struggling with composition, trying to make something interesting, and this is one where Lara is sort of in the road, so I'm working around her. But I take a couple of attempts at this because I actually know, because of the first time that I did it, well, I sort of figured that I think it's a howler monkey, it's probably going to run away when I get close. So I've got to be careful that I don't get too close, or I might lose my image. So basically play around here, trying to get some interesting composition and something happening in the shot. The actual shot that I take is a lot different to this mock-up here that I'm doing, but what I'm trying to capture is some emotion from the monkey, which is a little bit difficult, because it's sort of just sitting there not really doing too much. But I think in the actual photo that I've taken, it sort of looks, it's looking in a different direction. And this might be where you're taking photos of wildlife, you might need to, because you're essentially pausing the game, you might need to go in and out of photo mode quickly a few times and see what different expressions and things you can capture. So I think this will be my final attempt here to try and, so I think we'll see me getting a bit closer. Oh no, this is me just showing, yeah, so the monkey runs away when I get close. So here's the actual image that I took. I wasn't zoomed in quite as much as I was in that mock-up there. So we've got a bit more of those jungly leaves in the foreground, and the monkey's sort of looking up in a little bit more of an interesting way. So I really do like this image that I've taken, but what I did in my edit to take it a step further is I went black and white. I thought that this brought out more emotion from the monkey. Not that he's probably got much emotion to show, but it just has a bit better feeling for me. So anyhow, moving on to the next image, I like to do these vertical shots every now and then, just in case you want a phone wallpaper and just for something different to challenge myself. So let's try not to get sick while I roll. I've actually rotated the camera so that hopefully you don't get sick, but then trying to get composition here is painful. So as we can see here, just trying to get the composition when I'm in the vertical mode is quite difficult, and we eventually get something that's alright, but I'm trying to get this dead tree in the foreground to be the main thing that's in focus, and then the background can sort of just blur out. So just playing with that intensity a little bit, because we still want to see something in the background. And then I think that's about all there is to it. Once again, I'm going to change the color here because I don't particularly like the blues and greens that we get naturally from the game. So that's the image that we've got, and then yeah, so I darken this one up a lot more, trying to punch out the contrast a lot. I like this a little bit better, but once again, it's personal preference. Now let's move along to this big old tree. So this is a pretty standard jungle shot, I guess, looking up towards the trees. So I think there was a bunch of monkeys and stuff in this tree, but this image became more about just an overall feel. So the first time I tried to do that mock-up there, I realized I'm a bit too far away. And once again, I'm trying not to scare things away. I think you can see a monkey up there in the middle. So we're just going down as low as we can, and then we're shooting pretty much as wide as we can, a little bit in, not too far in though. And yeah, not too much to this shot really, just pretty much have everything in focus, I think. Probably mainly focused on the big tree, and then just everything else in the background can blur a little bit. So yeah, pretty much everything's in focus there. So then this is the shot that we end up with. The composition's a little bit different. Yeah, so not quite the same as my mock-up there, but you get the idea. The thing that made this a little difficult was that the game was linear, and if you don't know, the way that I do these is I take all the images in 4K, but at the moment I don't have the ability to record in 4K. Therefore, I can't take the images and record the video at the same time. So the video is in 1080 and the images are all 4K. So if you want to download any of the images, they're available on the Predictable Amusement Flickr account. So it makes it a little difficult when it's a linear game. You have to go back into everything again, which is a little bit more difficult than an open world game, but that's fine. So my edit here, what did I do? I just changed those colors again. Yeah, so similar to the last image with the dead tree, sort of brought out those same darker colors. Very contrasty. Okay, so what have we got next? Okay, so next we've got a plane that is under the water, and you can just see all of these images, how much of a blue-green tinge there is to everything. So I'm just taking a lot of that out. So here the focus is going to be on the plane. Really, I mean, taking photos in video games is simple. The art's already done for you. Everything looks good. You just need to have good composition. So think about your foreground elements. Think about what's in the background. What should be in focus? So here, obviously, the orange plane is my focus point, and we make sure that it's somewhere in the frame that is pleasing to the eye. Pretty central here, just slightly off to the side. We've got our rocks in the foreground, just more depth added to things. So that's the image, and then taking it into Lightroom, I sort of get rid of a lot of that greeny color. And I didn't want to kill everything too much though, because we still want to feel like we're underwater. So you can see at the top of the image, there's sort of the reflections from the water, and you've got some light rays coming down. I'm pretty okay with this one. I think I brought out the orange in the plane a little bit more as well. So now for a little bit of a bonus image. This is what I was talking about at the start in terms of the poses that Lara can do. So when you're in a cave or some area like this that's dark, Lara's light will come on, and changing her pose changes where the torch shines. So this is quite interesting if you're trying to get light on a certain part of the image. You can sort of just use Lara as a light source. So this will give you a bunch of different, I mean, the light is pretty much the same in every it's just where it's pointed. So you could point Lara in a certain area and it would show the light or not. But just if I focus it on the wall here, we can see just by moving it, we get a lot of variation in where the light is and how strong the light is. I didn't do anything particularly creative with this, but I think that's something that you could do if there's something in the game that you want to take photo of, but it's not lit well, or you want light coming from a different area. Use that to your ability. That's something you can do. And then I just edited it there for fun. But that's it for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I didn't honestly enjoy doing this video as much as the others, as I was saying before about it being more linear. I basically had to play through the story multiple times, and makes it a little bit more trickier for recording and taking photos. I would really enjoy going further into the game to take photos, and my wife's finished the game, so I might be able to steal her save and go around and take some more photos. But let me know if you like this game and if you want to see more images from it. I would be happy to go through and do that again. But I do have some more projects on the way that hopefully are a little bit more fun to take photos in and film. But yeah, I think that's everything. Like I said, if you want any of the images that you've seen here in this video, then go over to the Flickr account and download away. There's no watermarks, no anything. Feel free to do whatever you want with them. I've taken the photo, but it's obviously the artwork is done by the game developers, so I can't really put myself to making the art. So that's going to do it for this episode of Photo Mode. I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.